way the um, messenger went down. Um, kind of started the what I thought would be the topic of conversation, which was white privilege
Hmm.
in its current state in America, or in the current situation, because as his video goes out. Um, I feel it's not just an American thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know,
I think in the current climate, it's more of an American issue, but even that can't be said because of the protests throughout the world. Ah, there you go.
The original.
ooh,
I have a 4 foot tall version of that I'm going to frame and hang in my classroom.
nice.
But
So,
Sorry.
no, you're fine.
you're fine.
It's a cool sketch, print, thing. It's, my brain is so fried.
All right.
So
So,
Are we starting?
yes,
sure.
and
Okay.
I, I've spoken to you, Matt, about your views on white privilege. I think Cheyenne grasps a little bit on your views because you do have, wouldn't call it an extremist view. It's just not what people are used to hearing.
Sure. Um, and there's probably many reasons for that. And throughout this thing, I'm probably going to sound very harsh, callous, tactless, sharp, blunt, bold, and brazen. There's going to be a lot of words you could probably use for me. And most of them will probably be right. Uh, but I'm under the impression that the world no longer wants to ask the hard questions. We no longer want to deconstruct the problems of the world and get to their root cause and try to actually fix them. We'd rather throw our fist in the air in rage and do something that causes actually more harm than good, right? So here lately, I've spent a whole lot of time trying to be my own devil's advocate, looking at the other side of the aisle, so to speak, and figure out what can be done to bring myself a little more centered. Bit of my background, I'm a registered Democrat, have been my whole life. Up until last year, I've worked every election poll as a registered Democrat. I tend to vote complete Democrat, and a lot of people would probably hang me for this, but if I could, I'd vote a third term of Barack Obama. I love the man. And I know that's unconstitutional. You can't have a 3 term president anymore. But he was a good president. I've seen my own party, the Democratic Party, go in a really extreme uh, direction. And for 8 years, as a Democrat, I spent most of my time arguing with Republicans and conservatives about how extreme they were. But now I see the same thing coming from my side of the aisle. I see extremes, extremes that don't help anybody. They don't do any good. All it is, to me, and this is going to sound harsh, it sounds like children who don't know what to do screaming into the wind. Um, so I've developed a almost what you would say a more conservative view by doing that uh, than most people in my own political party, which has brought me a little away from the left and a little more center. Um, I still very much believe in a lot of the aspects of my party's political agenda. I believe in free and appropriate education for everybody. I don't think people should go bankrupt getting medicine. I believe everyone should have access to medication. But here lately, I've seen what, in my opinion, in my personal opinion, I have seen the Democratic Party wield racism as a weapon for political posturing, right? And and I don't like it. I really don't. Um, but we can talk more about that as we get into it. So you're talking about white privilege. So I have to take the stance on white privilege that I don't believe in it. Not one bit. It's one of the most absurd things that I have actually ever heard. I think at its root, it is corrupt. It does absolutely nothing good for black people in America today. Nothing. Um, and all it does is make white people feel good about themselves and more empowered, which is counterproductive to checking your white privilege, right? So, I mean, there's a lot that really goes into that. That we can break that down and we can talk about it. And I can even assume the position of a target, if you guys will. So you can throw things at me, you can question my stance, so on and so forth, but be prepared for me to also question your stance in the hopes that you will think about your own beliefs, deconstruct them, and maybe come out with something bigger and better than you had before, right? I'm not going to try to change your mind, but what I am going to try to do is make you think critically about your own stances and beliefs. And we'll do that by looking at facts, not emotions. So you'll never see me get emotional about this. An emotional response is automatically negated, in my opinion, because you have walked away from logic and intelligence for hate, anger, or something that just makes you feel good. So I'll try to stick to facts and logic. All right. So if you have questions for me, or if you got something you want to say, just jump in and we can have like a casual conversation, like a debate, if you will. But in a nutshell, I don't believe in white privilege. Don't think it exists. Thoughts? I'm opening
I
myself up
have
as a
to
target by making
disagree.
blanket
Well, I
statements.
have to disagree that white privilege doesn't exist.
Yeah,
That's
I
But
have to also disagree.
but
so far.
in my opinion, it's a hit and miss type of thing. Um,
No, no, see, you can't do that. You are saying white privilege. You are taking an entire demographic of people based on the color of their skin and labeling them. So you can't say it's hit or miss. If you say it's hit or miss, then you're saying it exists for some and not other, and therefore isn't predicated by the color of skin.
well, that
So
that
then you're just calling it privilege, which we can have a great debate on whether or not privilege exists, because I will tell you, yes, it does. Privilege does exist, but it is not solely a condition of melanin pigmentation, the shape of someone's cranium, the color of their skin, the size of their feet, right? We can argue about privilege and what that does to a community or a society. But when you say white privilege, you're labeling an entire demographic. And that in and of itself is racist. So every time someone tells me that I have white privilege, I will call them a racist.
Okay, I wholeheartedly disagree with a lot of that.
Specify.
So, white privilege isn't class privilege. I think that's where a lot of people immediately want to turtle up and be like, I'm white and I'm poor, so I don't have white privilege, right? I and it doesn't. It also doesn't mean you have white privilege, you're a racist. It's like, no, you just, there are things that you'd never have to worry about as a white
No.
person.
I'm saying if someone, I'm saying, let me clarify. If I'm saying someone tells me that I have white privilege, I will tell that person that they are a racist.
But we
Not that
we
I am a
do as
racist
white
for
people
having.
have white privilege.
How so?
Like okay, so let's take a quick example. Um Comic books, right?
Hmm.
So it's been getting better, and that's the cool thing about the modern era is things are getting better all the time. It's never
I love
it's
the Beatles.
it's things are not as bad as they were, and that's usually true except for Russia, where the meme of Russia is it thing and then things got worse. um as my friend Matt likes to joke. But there's just all kinds of small things and big things, like all of
No
the
white.
big Avengers, white, like Captain America until recently. Um, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Tony Stark. I don't know why I used his name instead of his title, Iron Man. Like I can just crack
Because
open a
the
comic
character
book
is
and
famous
odds
for
are
racist
the
slurs.
main character is white. Captain Marvel is white. Like I don't have to hunt around for a good character that matches my skin tone. You know? And like that psychologically has an effect on people. Babe, do you have to crush the can right now?
So
Sorry.
actually,
Like,
there's hundreds and hundreds of comic book characters that have been black or and are other races or ethnicities throughout. Um, that was the whole point of the X-Men, is for Marvel Comics. You know, Stan Lee, bless his soul, he's a great man, to actually teach diversity and acceptance of people that aren't like you. That's the whole point of the X-Men comics, and they have been around for a long time. Now, some of the original comic books, yes, they did start off with um, white people. Well, that was the target demographic. That was the people who were buying them, because the first comic book started out as westerns, right? It was like a cowboy and Indian kind of thing, and that fell out of vogue, so to speak, right around the time right after the First World War and before the Second World War, right? And that's when we start to see the comic books as we know them actually start to like come into fruition. Superman, by standards, was considered a horrible comic book when it first come out, and you know, you create a product to sell to a demographic, right? And at that point in time, the majority of people in the United States who read comic books were white. Just so happens the majority of the people in the United States that were literate were also white. So you typically don't sell books to people who can't read, which was a horrible thing, and we have since corrected that, and we have education for people, right? But that did change as time goes on. As the target demographic changes, comic book changed, and they were changed on purpose, right? Even if you look back at the original comic strips of the Peanuts gang, he specifically added a black character to show acceptance and diversity, specifically within a school setting during the times of integration. I think comic books have been a huge stepping stone for people when it comes to racism and acceptance, and helping people become more accepting of people's cultures and races. And so far, they've been on the forefront of that forever. So to say that there's racism in comic books, I would argue the opposite, that comic books has been a tool for decades, coming up to almost a century, to fight racism.
yeah, it is, but it still doesn't have equity in representation. That's what I was trying to get to.
What do you mean by equity and representation?
Roughly the same percentage of characters as in, say, the American population. If we just looked at American comic books, right? Like, like I said, it's getting better all the
Well,
time, and comic books are the
if we're going
forefront
to,
of that. Let me talk. Let me talk.
Go
They
ahead.
are
Go
the
ahead.
forefront of progress. They have been, but even the comic books still don't have equity in the ratio of their characters. And they
Well,
probably will be the first. They'll probably be the first ones to reach that. But my point is, we're not there.
the numbers you're reaching for there is really okay. Let me make some corrections for you here. You're saying that the number of ethnic people or black people in comic books isn't up to the ratio of people in the United States. 62% of all people in the United States are white. Only 13% of the people in the United States are black. So the moment you want to put a number on it and say, hey, we should have it equal, then we should have 62% of all comic book characters be white and only 13% be black. And that would be racist because why would we stop at 13%?
We don't have
When
to
I
stop
say,
at
how about,
13%. We're
right,
just below
we
it.
don't. So I don't think we're below it. No, and I could probably do the research on that. I'm a huge comic book fan. I got shelves and shelves full of them. I've been reading them since I was a little kid. I could probably go and actually pull up a listing of comic book characters based on their ethnicity. Actually, I have the Marvel and DC encyclopedias on my bookshelf, and I'll do that right when we get finished with this. Um, but there are way more um, than there used to be, yes. But what are you saying? You're saying for every white comic book character, there has to be a black? Do we have to force a race in, or can we just do that naturally and create characters that work and tell good stories?
In order to do it naturally, there has to be equity in hiring, right? Which they're doing nowadays, but it did not previously. It wasn't previously a thing.
All right. So we've diverged and talked, and now we're not talking about White Lives Matter, but equity and racism and hiring. So when you're talking about equity and hiring, won't you tell me more about that? What do you mean equity and hiring? Are you saying that there is a uh, inherent racism in the system when it comes to hiring practice in the United States?
I think there is an inherent cultural racism in people when it comes to hiring.
So you're saying all people are racist?
No, oh
Based on
my
your
god. Are we just gonna do this the whole time?
No,
No,
no.
I'm trying to have some clarification. That's all. Uh, because, like I said, I'll make arguments based on stats and facts. I won't make an argument based on a feeling. I spent 10 years in the business world, and I can tell you right now, at no point in time did I hire
This is
someone
gonna
based on their
sound.
skin color.
This is gonna sound
No did
horrible.
anybody that I work with.
This is gonna sound horribly sexist. But I believe
Go ahead.
what she's trying to say is there's also the female male aspect of it.
Oh no, that's definitely true. There's a disparity between the pay scales of males and females, which is closing. And at some point in time, females are going to overtake males because of the value of education and the type of jobs that females are now going into. You see more and more females in the workplace, specifically in the business realm. And when I talk business realm, I'm not talking about a small store owner. I'm talking about large corporations. So at some point in time, you're going to see females overtake males when it comes to pay scale. Um, there is definitely a gap there, but the boys' club is slowly dying. Thank goodness. But to say that there is a hiring practice in the United States that is inherently racist because they will hire white people before they hire black people, you're you're telling me that if somebody walked in with an application and they have a degree that qualifies them to do the job with a wonderful GPA, a great work ethic and background and all these references, and a white person comes in with the same exact qualifications, that they're going to hire the white person because of the color of his skin? I have never once seen somebody do that, nor have I heard of it. And if that happens, there is somebody who is specifically racist, which is an individualized thing, not a cultural thing. I, I don't, and we can get into that debate at some point in time on whether or not racism is a cultural thing and whether or not racism exists as a what is the word that everyone likes to throw around? Systemic
Mimic.
issue. That's a completely other debate, which we could also sit here and we can debunk all day long. But it gets thrown around a lot. But
Well,
we're
it's
specifically
part
talking about privilege.
yeah, the systemic racism is a facet of the white privilege discussion, though. Because, I mean, we almost got into it a topic and a half in, right? We ran right into that.
Well, sure, they're tied together because in order to say white privilege exists, you have to say that all white people are racist.
No, you do not have to say all white people are racist to say that white privilege
So,
exists.
saying that it exists. So, what does that make me?
I mean, you deny that it exists. Like, you don't
Also
believe it
deny
exists.
Bigfoot exists. Also deny the Loch Ness monster exists.
I can deny that the sun is yellow, but it's actually does emit more green light than yellow light. But bad example. Like, you can deny anything you want to deny. Like,
But I can back up my denial with substantial stats, proof, so on and so forth.
I mean, I can back up that white privilege exists with substantial stats, so on and so forth. I was just
Okay.
camping
I'm
in the
asking.
woods and didn't have 4 hours to prepare today.
All right. Okay. So you're just saying it exists because it exists.
No, it does exist. Like, I've done what little research I can do, and it definitely does exist. Maybe I don't experience it very much, but
I've never experienced it. I'm 45 years old, and all of my 45 years, I've never experienced white privilege of any sort.
I have.
How so?
Every time I've been pulled over by a cop, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm pissed off, but I'm not afraid of that cop. I'm not worried that that cop is going to treat me more harshly than someone else. You know, I don't have a fear of that.
Okay, there's a lot of things that actually go into that. The fear of cops and what that causes during an arrest situation. Do I have a fear of cops? No. No. How do I respond to cops when I get pulled over determines how a cop's going to respond to me a lot of time. With that being said, I've also been yanked out of a movie theater and beat with a mag light. I've been slammed on the hood of cop cars. I've been pulled over because I looked like I didn't belong. This is my beautiful daughter, Morgan. She's on her way to bed, right? It's already 30 minutes past your bedtime. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Because I looked like I didn't belong, now get this, on a college campus. I was pulled out of my car wearing nothing more than a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and my shoes, and forced to stand in about 10-degree weather for 2 hours with my hands on a freezing sheet of metal, which was the back of my car, because I looked like I didn't belong. And that wasn't because I was white or black. That's because I looked like I didn't belong in a setting which is higher education. Because of the way I dressed, actually. But, so
Right, like he profiled
a
you
lot of
based on what you
things-
were wearing.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's
So
multiple kinds of that sort of thing.
yeah, and a lot of times when police officers profile somebody, it is based on that. So it's not necessarily based on whether they're white or whether they're black. Are there bad cops out there? Yes, there definitely are. You know, and a lot of this stuff's come to it's come to the forefront because of Mr. Floyd, which was a tragedy. The man didn't deserve that. At no point in time did he deserve to have someone suffocating. That's neither here nor there, right? But people think because of the media that that is a constant issue. People think that there are cops out there that are hunting black people down like it's the purge, when it's actually not happening. It's really not. The percentage of black people, unarmed black people, let's go with the unarmed, right? Let's not go with armed. Because the moment you pull a gun, I don't care what color you are, the cop has the right to shoot, right? I don't care if you're green with purple polka dots. The moment you brandish an arm against a police officer or any other human being on the face of this planet, if they have the means in which to protect their own life, they should do so. So let's go with unarmed black people in America. How many unarmed black people were killed in Chicago last year? Has the highest crime rate, and it's 1/3 black. So it has a very, very large black community. It's not even the 13% national average. It's literally 33% black. How many people were killed in Chicago with the highest crime rate and the tightest gun laws, by the way, in the city of Chicago last year by police officers?
I mean, you can go ahead and answer it.
None. How about the year before that? None. Right? The police are not out there hunting down black people like they're like it's open season and they've got a tag for 3. It's not actually happening, and it's just sensationalized by the media. Right now, we can get into why it's being sensationalized by the media all day long. Yet again, another topic we can talk about, but it's actually not happening that way. The number one cause of death for an African American male between the ages of like 20 and 30 is other African American males. Homicide. Right? There are 7,000 black men killed in America every year. And it's like 90-some% of them are by other black males. Right? It's not by cops. Right? Nobody wants to talk about that. Right? So
But why are you bringing
where
up
do we
black
do
on
that?
black murders when white people kill just about the same amount of white people?
Because the reason I'm bringing it up, and I'm not bringing it up to talk about black on black murder, I'm talking about to make a contrast between black on black murder and cops on black murder. Because when a cop kills a black man, it's all over the news media, right? It gets publicized. Trayvon Martin, we can go on all day long. It gets publicized. How many white people killed by cops have you seen on the news media?
The girl that was tear gassed to death, for one.
During a riot. Yeah, that was intelligent. It's like that lady that took her kid to a riot and he got hit in the face with a tear can. Good mother and way to be.
It's definitely the parents' fault that the cops tear gassed their kids. Yes, you're correct.
You don't take your kid to a riot. There's a difference between a peaceful protest and a riot. I would never take my kids into a dangerous situation like that, even if I was.
Was the girl who was tear gassed to death at a riot?
Was it a registered peaceful protest?
Is it a riot if it's an unregistered peaceful protest?
Technically, in order to have a peaceful protest, you're supposed to file for a permit.
I know, but if is it automatically a riot, morally speaking, if they're non-violent protesters without a permit?
If you commit a crime during that peaceful protest, it's no longer a peaceful protest. You've committed a crime. But what I'm trying to talk about here is everyone acts like there's all of this cop on black violence going on out there. And it's not true. That is a false narrative. It really is. So saying you have white privilege because you don't have to worry about a cop killing you because you're white is false. It's absolutely false. You can look the numbers up. I mean, the likelihood of a white person being killed by a cop, I can find you an unarmed white person being killed by a cop. I can find you a one-on-one scenario for every black person killed by a cop. So that's a false scenario. That's completely fake, false, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't exist.
It's not. Black men are 2.5 times more likely than white men to be killed by a cop. They don't commit 2.5 times more crime than white men. So why are they 2.5 times more likely to be killed by the cops?
They don't commit that much crime? I mean, I'm not trying to get into that, but we've unfortunately in this country forced our black community into completely impoverished areas with little hope of getting out. We forced them into areas with schools that are constantly being defunded with little hope of getting out, right? We forced them into areas of extremely high crime rates with no hope of getting out. So that's that's a socioeconomic debate right there that crosses over socioeconomic status with the amount of crime committed in an area based on its poverty level. So, I mean, have you ever heard the old saying, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail? A lot of times, cops become jaded. At that point in time, they should retire. They should get the heck out of police enforcement, or out of law enforcement. But you have cops that are working the same impoverished areas their entire lives that are high crime rate. They are absolutely high crime rate. I've worked in high crime rate areas. I'm a school teacher. I've always taught school in impoverished areas with extremely high crime rate. I've been involved in gang riots inside of the school over which gang got to sell drugs inside the school. I've had to help sixth grade girls deal with gangbangers that force them to smuggle drugs into the school, mule drugs in so they can sell them. I've had to take shanks away from Latino kids because they're afraid that another race was going to attack them for being Latino. I've seen the gambit. I've seen it all. I've had students try to commit suicide in my classroom. And I've seen it all. I really have. I've had to run drug dealers and gangbangers off of school grounds personally. Right? I've seen teachers go to the hospital defending their students. I've seen it all. Right? So there is a higher level of crime in lower socioeconomic status areas. That's the core of your problem. Right? It's not whether you're white. It's not whether you're black. It's not predicated on skin color. Not at all. It has more to do with classism. Is there white privilege? No, but there is class privilege. People that grow up with a higher socioeconomic status have a better chance of surviving in any environment, right? They have they're more likely to succeed in life. They're more likely to get a higher education. My students who have parents who have went to college, they're something like 60% more likely to get a college degree themselves. And that goes the other way. Students who have parents who never graduated high school, they're more than likely not going to graduate high school. There's a lot you have to change. It's based off of class and socioeconomic status. That's where your privilege lies. It's not in the color of your skin. I've seen too much. I've experienced too much. I've seen the numbers, right? A lot of times I hear this stuff like white privilege get thrown around, but there's absolutely no numbers to support it. None whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I think it does more harm to the black community than it does good. Because at the moment you say a white person is more likely to succeed because they are white, you're telling a black person because they are black, they are worth less and less likely to succeed, and therefore are not going to achieve. So good job with that. That in and of itself is racist. So no, I don't believe in white privilege. I've never seen it. I've never experienced it. I've never met a person who's experienced privilege based on the color of their skin. I've seen people who have experienced privilege based on their socioeconomic status or their class. And that's classism, which runs rampant in the United States. That is true. We can talk about how to fix that.
Okay.
We didn't even talk about where it came from.
So, you acknowledge that white people did shove people of color into the socioeconomic areas and positions, correct?
Absolutely.
Because of the color of their skin, yes?
Absolutely.
Does this not create a disparity then in advantages that people inherently have? Like, I'm not a rich white bitch. I don't have the socioeconomic advantages that rich white people get. No, but I do benefit from other things. Like,
so
I'm not worth more than another person. Like, a person of color has just been shat on more than I have as a poor white person. Like,
really?
I'm doing better now that I'm an adult, but like growing up, like I just didn't experience a lot of the awful things that a poor person of color in my area would experience. Like, people where I'm from are fucking racist. Like
I know
the
racist people, but race is an individual quality. I shouldn't even call it a quality. It's an aspect of someone's individual personality, which is abhorrent, unintelligent, and uh, should be dealt with on a one-on-one like basis. But systemic racism, I don't think exists in the United States anymore. And here, I'll have you prove it for me. Name the law in the Constitution or anywhere in any law book that actually keeps a black person, like any person of any color, or any person based on the color of their skin from succeeding. It doesn't exist.
they deliberately had to rip them out. It's not just going to go
They're
away.
gone. They're gone.
Like
There are no laws. They still have the same
the
opportunities.
laws are gone, but the attitudes are not. People are still
That's
raised
an
like
individual.
this. My parents
That's
were
an
raised like
yeah,
this.
and they're ignorant. They're absolutely ignorant, and I'll call them out on a one-on-one basis and say you are ignorant, and this is why.
Yes, but it is prevalent and
Very
what's the
prevalent.
word? Pervasive where I am from.
Where are you from?
There are businesses where I'm from that quietly, because it's not a letter of a law, won't hire a person of color. Now,
Where are you
granted,
from?
there are maybe five people of color at any given time in the place where I grew up, but it is definitely a thing. Just because it's not on books, just because we deleted the lines from the Constitution that
So
that
it's not
made slavery okay, like it doesn't make it go away culturally, systemically. Like you have to actively acknowledge the bad things that we've done contributed to, and then you have to fix it.
so wait.
Like if you don't
Wait.
want to say white privilege exists, that's fine, but we do have problems that we
What do
do
you mean
need
by
to
wait?
address.
What do you mean by wait?
Like the
Did
country,
you do that?
white people, like shit that we didn't do
Like you
ourselves.
did?
Shit that we didn't do
Did you do it?
ourselves, but like we could help fix.
Everybody can help fix everything. The best way to help fix it is to stop becoming enraged about stuff that doesn't actually exist and actually try to fix the things that do. Do you know at one point in time it was more likely for a black person in America to grow up in a nuclear family with a mother and father at home than a white person? But
When was that
under
time?
what's that?
When?
When? Oh, I'm getting to that. Actually, even under slavery, when it was policy to rip families apart, it was more likely for a black child to grow up in a nuclear family with a mother and father than it is today. Now, what changed all that, and I love him for what he did for NASA, was LBJ, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he was a Democrat, became president, came out of Texas. And he said, and I quote, there will never be a Southern Democrat in the White House unless we can get the black vote. Now, how do we get the black vote, right? If we can get the black people on welfare, we'll have the niggers voting Democrat for 200 years. His exact words. Half of the policies that are in place that keep black people impoverished were put there by the Democratic Party, and I'm saying that as a Democrat. The welfare state keeps people impoverished on the government dole. It doesn't give them a way out. It creates sinkholes, voids of economic, just like despair, and shoves them all into it with the promise that we're going to help you out. We'll shake a fish in front of you to get your vote. And they keep promising poor people, not just black people, poor people, these like handouts in order to, buddy up to them. Well, when reality, all you're doing is continuing to keep them in poverty. You're doing more to harm them. And in order to qualify for those, guess what? You can't be married. So where are the fathers teaching people respect? Where are the fathers teaching people morals? No. Everybody is now learning all of their behaviorals from their idols off of TV. We're idolizing basketball players and musicians like never before, right? We have single mothers trying to parent 2 and 3 kids, and we have absentee fathers that really don't give a shit, right? And this isn't just a black community thing. Right now, under Lyndon Baines Johnson, we were about 20% of African Americans were a single parent household. We're up to almost 80%, right? And that should scare the crap out of white people because right now, 25% of white people are from a single parent household. And those numbers are just going to go up. And we're going to see entire cities become completely impoverished because they're on the government dole. Now, what's going to happen? Right? Somebody's going to dangle a carrot and say, come vote for me and we'll give you a little more money. Just continue to live over here in poverty. Okay? So if there's anything in this country that is systemic and racist, it's the welfare state because it keeps people impoverished. It gives you no way out, right? It completely tears apart the morals. I mean, I've never had to raise a kid by myself. I got 4 of them, but the thought of it would scare the crap out of me. And how would you do that? How do you still work and raise kids? You can't. So you see job loss, right? You see people barely getting by. This is why you see higher crime rates in predominantly poor areas. And unfortunately, after World War II, when all of our soldiers come home from World War II, we built houses for everybody but the black people and stuck them in it. By the way, that was a Democratic policy. Let's build housing projects and stick all the black people in it, right? And watch their entire culture deteriorate. This is why I said the other day, I'll use my white privilege to help fight and correct it for the black people because it's always worked for them in the past. I was being sarcastic. At no point in time have what we've done policy-wise actually helped the black community. So going around there and screaming, white privilege, I've had white privilege. They don't need that. They don't. People have privilege. People have privilege based on their socioeconomic status. I will never know the kind of privilege that someone like Donald Trump has had. Ever. I will never know the type of privilege that Barack Obama has had, who was raised rather wealthy, by the way. He made it further in life than I did. I'm a humble school teacher. I teach high school mathematics. I also have a degree in social studies, anthropology, archaeology, and a minor in Native American studies. I want to talk about an impoverished people that's been held down by a welfare state. Go look at Native Americans, where alcoholism kills most of the males. And they're right there in our backyard, but nobody's talking about that. That's why I brought up earlier, why is there 7,000 black people killed in America every year, but nobody talks about it, right? Why are we not asking these questions? Because it's all about votes. It truly is. We want to throw our fist into the air and we want to scream when it's politically prosperous to do so. And I'm slamming my own political party right now. I'd call any one of them to the carpet right now and call them to task, and I'll have the debate with them, and I'll call them all hypocrites and racist. Because all they're doing is they're gaining political positioning off of the backs of the black people while they watch them die and do absolutely nothing about the poverty that's put them there. Right? So, does white privilege exist? If it makes you feel better. Right? If that's the religion you want to tout. Because that's what that's become. White privilege has pretty much become a religion in and of itself. The whole anti-racist movement in America has become a religion, almost like cult-like, and that's scary. I mean, I can equate so many aspects of anti-racism to religion, and let's just look at some of them. Let's see. Let's talk about the white privilege. I was born with it, right? There's nothing I can do about it. It's inherent in who I am because I'm white. I can't get rid of it. All I can do is try to make it better and apologize. That's original sin. That's straight out of the Old Testament. That's Garden of Eden shit right there. Right? That's saying that there's something wrong with me because of the way I was born, which, again, is racist, right? That there's nothing I can do about, and all I can do is run around apologizing for it and hoping it makes everybody else feel better. So now you've just criminalized who I am because of the color of my skin and said there's nothing I can do about it.
That's not what it is, dude.
That is what it is.
No, it's not.
That's the definition of it.
It is not.
Okay.
No.
Why
it's an acknowledgement of how the system benefits us more than it benefits people of color. The fact that it is set up to do so. That's all it is. White privilege is just acknowledging the rigged monopoly game. It's nothing more than that. It's not a cult, it's not a religion. Some people definitely get a little too angry about it, but it's not a fucking cult, man. Like, I'm not saying that, like, I'm shitty because I'm white. I'm saying the system is nicer to me,
So now
base
there's a
level,
conspiracy.
because I'm white. It's not a conspiracy. We literally
You're
had
saying it's-
slaves for 400 years,
What?
and only recently
And we literally
stopped
haven't had slaves
segregation.
forever. And
You
we
don't
literally-
just wipe away the stain of racism with a couple generations and the erasure of a few laws. It is systemic because people just have
Why
living
can't-
memory of horribly treating people of color. It's hard to get rid
Why
of that.
Why can't you? I never owned slaves. I've never known anybody to own slaves. I've actually never met somebody who has been a slave. Those people are all gone.
Those people are
the
dead,
people who
yes.
had slaves were horrible. Did it have a cultural effect on black people? Yes, absolutely it did. But to continue to run around and say everything is still racist is actually making it worse. We live in a country right now that has less racism than it has ever had. But people are acting like it has more than it's ever had. There are more opportunities for people in general in this country than anywhere else in the world. But people are acting like this is the most oppressed society you could ever live in. It's simply not true.
People are acting like we can do better, and we can do better.
Yes, I'm not saying you can't, that it's impossible to do better. You should always strive to do better. If not, you become stagnant. But are you doing better by constantly touting something from the past that doesn't even exist in that form anymore? There are not hundreds of politicians in office coming up with policies to control black people. It's not there. It just simply isn't there. I mean, and you said it yourself, you know, that it was something I was born with, that I have to acknowledge it. You're telling me I have to come to terms with something that I have no control over. And I mean, that again sounds like some kind of like new racist, like neo-racism religious aspect. There's just something in your life that you're born with that you have to come to terms with before the end of times. I mean, we're talking Judgment Day stuff there. I mean, seriously, think about some of the stuff that gets touted around this.
My question is if it's a generational thing.
and
How
if
many
anybody-
generations does it take to heal something like that? Because if I mean, we'll forever. If you're German, you're forever. By that
Exactly.
aspect,
Why are Germans constantly being judged by something that happened in their past? Right? Why do we constantly want to bring up stuff from the past and constantly judge people by it? That's ethnocentric. That is judging one culture based on the qualities of your own. Do I agree with what people did in the past? No. I love to study Rome. I'm not going to feed Christians to lions. Right? I study all kinds of cultures. I'm not going to do what they did. I'm not going to judge them by it. That was a different time. It was a different place. It was a different world. There's racism that still exists. There's still slavery in this world. Actual slavery. Right? True slavery. People owning people and profiting off of that.
the sex trade, yeah, the sex trade in America.
It exists here in the United States, and that has actual no color, right? That's happening to people all over the world. You go over to the Middle East, you go to Africa, you go to Asia. There's still people who actually legally own people, and we're wanting to. I mean, Civil War ended, slavery's over, Emancipation Proclamation. We now have integration. We have equal. Not equal but separate, but we have equal rights for every human being in the United States once you turn 18. We are in the least racist country probably in the world. We are in one of the most accepting countries. Why do we keep pulling up this old thing of racism from hundreds of years ago and saying it still exists like some ugly monster? And what does
Huh.
that say to black people, other than get them enraged and they go out in riots? How many people have died in the riots? George Floyd's death was a travesty. It really was. But how many people have died in the riots? How many black people have died in the riots? So far, there's 4 black cops to die in the riots, and there's 1 in the hospital in critical condition. What has that done for the black community? Now we have black people who have literally tried to make their community better, and they're dying. Think about the ramifications of what we do, what we say. When we keep pulling this old monster out from under our bed and shaking it around for some benefit because it makes us feel good. You know, what does white privilege really do when you say it and you apologize for it? Does it make you feel good, make you sleep better at night? Does it do anything for the black community?
It does not make me feel better. It doesn't make me sleep better at night. It's nothing more than an acknowledgement.
It,
Like
I see where
you
he.
can
Privilege
deny
is
it.
personal.
It's fine. Go ahead, John.
Privilege is personal.
I can
Yeah.
kind of see where you're coming from, where you want to acknowledge it. I understand. I also understand Matt's point of by acknowledging it so loudly, you're kind of throwing it in the face of the people you're standing up for. I do understand.
It's demeaning.
Right, it's kind of
It's
demeaning.
saying that I was born white and I'm better than you because of it, because I have all these things, and I'm sorry that you don't. That is just, ugh. No, thank you. But uh, we as white people keep trying to fix the black community, and we only make it worse. We keep trying to make ourselves feel better about what our ancestors did that we had nothing to do with. That the black people living in the United States right now had nothing to do with. If we truly want to make things better, we need to stop finding ways to pat our own selves on the back and figure out how to pass policies that get rid of classism, that helps destroy low socioeconomic status for everybody across the board. Because I tell you right now, it's all encompassing and it's a cancer and it's going to eat everything in this country. Right now, you see it predominantly in the black neighborhoods because they had to start out in the poorest neighborhoods. They had to start out on the outskirts of town because racism did exist at one point. You know, it's gone. It's gone. My cousin used to have to walk into the street whenever a white person came down the street in Florida, or they whoop her because she was black, right? Loved the woman to death. She saw racism. Now, she's extremely wealthy. She had no white privilege. She's like extremely wealthy, and has done really well for herself. She has children who have done absolutely fantastic because of the choices she made growing up. Um, so people keep talking about all this stuff, but all I've ever seen is the other side of the spectrum of what people talk about. I've known people who are individually racist, and they disgust me. They really do. Um, but to see this mass system that has kept black people down, like here in current times, and that because I'm white, I've had it so much better. Uh, One can make the argument that because of some of the policies that we've put in place, it would be easier for a person of color to get into a college than a white person, especially if they had the same stats. Because, you know, because of laws, there are laws in place that says you have to have so many black people. So in order to fill that quota, they'll take a black person over a white person. Someone can make that argument, and it's a very valid argument. And it's very destructive to the black community, to be completely honest. I mean, if you just wanted to go back and look at the UCLA, right? UCLA started, you know, at one point in time had to admit people based on the color of their skin. And if you looked at the honors class, um, and I think it was 1999, so it wasn't that long ago, out of the 3,000 members of the honors class, there was only one of them that was black. Now, why is that? So you have to start deconstructing education and how that works. And we know that people learn better in an environment that's more suited to them, right? So I against having an all black school if all black people want to go to it because that's more suited to them and they feel more comfortable? No, go ahead and do it because there is all black colleges, by the way, and they tend to have about every 1 in 5 students at the honors level instead of 1 in 3,000. Only trying to fix it, trying to apologize. It's like we're just trying to pat ourselves on the back and tell everybody, look how great we're doing for you. It's done nothing but destroy the black community, right? We need to let them be black, right? We need to be okay with that. And we need to let them fix their own community and stop trying to help. All we're doing is destroying it. Every time we do something to help, we do more to destroy it. I mean, we riot because one man dies, 5 more dies in the riots. Good men, trying to help their communities, trying to do better. Educated men, men who are fathers, men who are sons. There's mothers out there crying, right? So let's go raise our fist in anger. Let's bust out some windows, right? Let's make sure our voice is heard, but do absolutely nothing productive about it. I know I've been up on a soapbox preaching, and I'm sorry for that. But I was once an extreme left, all the way. John knows this. I used to sit and argue the other way, the complete other side of the aisle, against my buddy Les, who was I called him a right-wing nut job for years, and I'm starting to sound a little like it. But I don't think there's any big conspiracies though. I don't think people have privilege based on the color of their skin because that's degrading to everybody, right? That's automatically accusing me of a crime I didn't commit and assigning qualities to me based on an entire demographic in which I may or may not identify with.
Well, I mean, you can't argue the fact.
My grandpa was a Mexican. I could be Mexican for all you know.
You can't argue the fact, though, that it was police, and that it was police in 3 situations that involved a black individual. So
there was also a black cop there, by the way. When Floyd died, there was a black police officer standing there. There was also a Chinese police officer.
I think that's part of it. I think that pulls into a different topic altogether.
Well, yeah, you're talking about police brutality, which definitely exists. It needs to be checked. We have the wrong people becoming police officers at this point for all the wrong reasons. I mean, I think we need more psychological evaluations, better training, de-escalation training. We need better laws about what it means to detain somebody and how to properly do that, which we're already seeing passed because of stuff like this, like the young lady who was shot and killed because of a no-knock warrant here in Kentucky. Her boyfriend had every right to open fire on those police officers.
Mm-hmm.
Every right. They stepped into his home without knocking, just rammed the door down because they thought someone might be there. No. That's police brutality. That is unjust. In my opinion, it's unconstitutional. And I love Bashir to death. He's fixing that, right? Go Andy. But no, but that police brutality, that's what I'm talking about. That was the Cheyenne, that was your name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the first thing you mentioned, was look at the police brutality. And I agree, police brutality is there, but it's not just against black people. I mean, Daniel Shover, Andrew Thomas, Dylan Noble, Lauren Simpson, all white people, unarmed, killed by police officers. Right? Just to name a few. Like I said, for every black person killed by a police officer that's unarmed, I can give you a white person around the same time with probably the same circumstances. There's a problem in our police force. I agree with that. Is it race? I think it's something else. It's something different.
I think the frequency is disproportionate by race, though, because it is far, far more likely, and it's not proportionate to crime rate, it's far more likely for a black person to suffer police brutality, and most people of color to suffer it over white people.
Again,
it's definitely, there's definitely some amount of bias. All of it is wrong. All of it is wrong.
Again,
It should not happen to
you could
anyone.
attribute, you could attribute that to the area in which they have to live, that the low socioeconomic status. You can attribute that to classism. Because a black person in Martha Vineyard is not going to get beat with a nightstick, right? Um, you go to over to Indian Hill, right here in Cincinnati, and a black person living in Indian Hill running down the street, the cops aren't going to pull them over because they automatically think they're a thief. You go to Price Hill, it's different, right? And that's anybody. If you see a white person just running past a cop in Price Hill, they're going to hit their lights. They're going to want to know why they're running. It's because of the area. It's because of how poor they are, and this perception that comes along with that every poor person is a criminal. That every person that looks at like they're of a lower class is a criminal, right? And I think that's where the problem lies. I seriously do not believe that it is just the color of the skin. Now, unfortunately, black people, the majority of them have to live in impoverished areas, right? And that was caused by the welfare state. Let's keep giving them handouts. Lyndon Baines Johnson literally had a campaign. He walked door to door. He had people walking door to door, knocking. Hello, ma'am. The government will give you a check if you're not married. We will give you money for your kids if you are not married. Oh, you're married? Have you thought about divorce? This was the political campaign by the Democratic Party to help get black voters. I crap you not. That was racist, in my opinion. And that was something that was done by a specific politician, right? That has continued to perpetuate this culture of poverty that causes the pipeline to the prison, right? Because of the lack of education, we see a disproportionate amount of African Americans going to prison. Why is that? Because they live in an impoverished area with no hopes of a good education.
Well, now
I've taught in those areas.
I mean,
I've literally had students say, when I'm 18, I'll go to prison anyway. Who cares? I've had female students say to me, they're like, I don't need a job. I'll just get welfare like my grandmother did. That's the culture we've helped create for them, right? And that culture is bleeding over into white culture. It truly is. It's running rampant. Right? I grew up impoverished. I grew up in a 2-bedroom house with 12 people. The basement was dirt and the whole house smelled like it. I remember like having to share one can of like soup with me and my siblings and my cousins because all my uncles were out of work and they lived with us too. And my dad was the only one working, so he supported everybody in the family. So I cannot say what it's like to have black skin, but I have experienced a lot of the same things they have, if not all of them, right? I've never been arrested. Every time a cop pulls me over, it's yes, sir, right? I try not to do things to get arrested. I try not to commit crimes, right? So a lot of it's based on the choices that we make. I was privileged in the fact that my mother and father gave me good morals, right, to live on so that I can make good decisions for my life, so I can have a better life and better provide for my children. And at a young age, that was the logic that was given to me. One day you're going to be a father. You're going to have to provide for children. This is the type of man you need to be. Right? That's what we need more of. We need more good role models in the homes. We need people raising their own kids, passing down their cultures and their traditions and everything that's positive about it. And that's how you're going to end all this. It really is. It's not by us fixing it for them. We need to stay off their lives. Right? You can find video after video of black people being asked what they think about white privilege or what they think about like racism or all these topics that are a hotbed on all the news channels. And they think it's ridiculous. Right? Do the research on the other side. I did. I'm not saying I'm a changed man completely for it, but I came out the other side a little bit different with a little bit different thought, and realized. I mean, I used to go to when I used to go to Black Lives Matter rallies and stuff like that. And this I had this Black history professor. He was the head of the history department at NKU. He had me go to this Black Lives Matter rally. I'm like, oh yeah, well I'll do that because I believe in that, right? Black Lives Matter. You know what the lady said? Shut up, sit down, and leave us alone. Let us fix it. She pretty much told me the same thing that I'm telling you, that we've created this mess for them years ago, and we can't fix it for them. We need to stop trying because we're making it worse. That's exactly what she said. We need to concentrate on education.
That's not what happened to me when I went to protest.
I went to a seminar where a lady with a PhD spoke about it. Now, what happened to you when you went to protest? I've been to several protests. I've never been to a riot, though. But what happened when you went to a protest? Tell me about it. I'm interested.
No, I don't think I will.
All right. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I'm more than willing to talk about any aspect, and I'll play devil's advocate. I'll argue the other side if you guys want. But you know, you were talking about disproportionate black people being disproportionately killed by cops. We keep coming
They
back
are.
around to that. Yeah, I got the stats here. 25% of all people killed by cops are black. 50% of all people killed by cops are white. Now, you do have to take into account 60%, 62% of the population is white and only 13% are black. Right? But that's a numbers trick that people use in debates, and they say it's disproportionate because a quarter of the people killed by cops are black, right? And it's only 13%. Well, you got to look at crime rate. So you got to actually look at people that are being detained by cops. And if you actually look at the number of people that the cops attempt to detain that get killed by race and death, you'll actually find that more white people are killed by cops during an attempted arrest than black people. It's true. Because you got to look at the crimes committed and the attempts to detain a criminal, right? You can't just compare it to population, because I can compare something to the population of the world, right? And if I did, like, you know, that in China, which has 1 billion people, and I said it's disproportionate, look at the number of black people killed in China because they have like 2% of the population of China, but 25% of all people killed in China by cops are black. Yeah, well, you got 1 billion Chinamen. You got to look at the number of crimes being committed and the attempts to detain a criminal. And then you'll see the numbers come out a little different. You'll actually see that more white people are killed by cops and the attempt to detain a criminal than black people. Hold on, I think my kids want to kiss night night. I love you guys. Come here, my sweetie. Y'all should have been asleep 45 minutes ago. Just saying.
So,
What's that? Yeah. Like, all I'm really saying is we got to stop trying to right the wrongs of history by pushing guilt on the people of the present. I was watching this really interesting video, and these 3 girls were cleaning BLM off the side of a federal building, Black Lives Matter. And a lady drove up. They're like, "What are you doing?" They're like, "Well, we're cleaning this graffiti off of the building." They're like, "Why?" "Well, it's graffiti, and this is a federal building. We want it to look nice." Taking pride in the place they work, right? Nothing wrong with that. And they're like, and this was a white lady, right? She's like, "Don't you care about Black lives?" "Well, of course we do." "Then why are you trying to get rid of Black Lives Matter?" "Because it's graffiti on the side of our building." And the lady said, "You need to check your white privilege. I'm disgusted," and drove off. Pardon? I mean, Yeah, baby. Hugs. Yes. Thank you. Literally, we have a white person shaming another white person for taking pride in the area in which they work. It wasn't a matter of them thinking black lives are worth less, because they're not. They just wanted the building they worked in to look good, and they were erasing graffiti off of it. If someone spray painted my house, I would erase it. Um, but they were told to check their white privilege. Hmm. I mean, how degrading is that? Truly. Because they didn't agree with this lady, they were somehow less or less educated or cared less about somebody else because they're not admitting guilt for something they had nothing to do with. Right?
White people on white people guilt is rampant right now.
It is. And that's the thing. We try to guilt each other into believing how we believe. I mean, you could argue that I'm doing the same thing right now, but I'm trying to like just throw out.
Oh hell yeah,
stuff, right?
yeah. I mean, it's.
I'm trying to look at it critically. I mean, I was one of these people at one point in time, right? I was far left. That was me. I'm reformed, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I was one of those people too for quite a while. And then I looked at the situation and, you know, kind of think, I'm not going to agree with you wholeheartedly. There's
I wouldn't expect
there's a lot that I mean, uh, I think you are completely right. There's a class issue.
Absolutely.
There's a race issue too. Because you can't.
But I don't think it's systemic.
You can't say
I
that.
think it's more individualized.
You can't say that.
To say it's systemic is saying that there is some kind of larger conspiracy. That there's literally
There's the KKK. There, the whole state of Utah, or not Utah. God, what is that state? Where the white supremacists have basically taken a foothold.
There are white supremacists in every state. There are white supremacists probably in every country.
I mean,
there are also black supremacists. I mean,
you can't. But
that's just ignorance.
You can't.
And to try to. It's
Dude, let John talk for like 30 seconds.
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
You can't say that it's not an issue when, well, that can also be blamed on the media. That this whole David Blaine, or David whatever his name is, white supremacist, running.
I don't even listen to people like that.
Running. Well, it was in the news. It was in the national news that he was running for something and somebody supported him or something. And
somebody's going to.
Right. And I'm like, it's either a really coy way of just poking at a situation that's already inflamed.
Sure, he's probably trying to get 5 minutes of fame, even if he looks stupid doing it. But I mean,
you can't say that
it's not what it used to be, man.
White supremacists are, though. Like,
they are so few of them. Every now and then, one or two of them, or a group of them, will rear their ugly head, and then they'll crawl back into the hole for 10 years, right? And they'll do something stupid to get some media coverage and crawl back in their hole for another 10, 20 years. It's kind of like Voldemort, right? You don't say his name. Why? Because then you're giving them credit. It's like mass murderers. Don't say their name. Don't give them their 5 minutes of fame. Do what everybody else does, and ignore them. Walk away from them. And all 12 of them that decided to march out of their mama's basements, to tout their like racist bull crap, will go right back to their mama's basements and drinking PBRs. I mean, just, but to say that that's such a small number of people is a systemic issue. I know black people that are totally racist, totally badmouth white people all day long. I'll give them a hug. I'm sorry, buddy. Pat them on the head. I'm sorry you feel that way. Maybe you'll get over it. I'm not going to hate them for it, but there are people who are going to hate people. That has been a people issue for 80,000 years, which is about how long we've been on the face of the planet. I mean, it happens, has happened, will happen. To say it's a problem that's completely inherent and it's a systemic issue, I don't see it. There's no numbers to back it up. Not anymore. I mean, not in 100 years, probably. I mean, we've made so many strides forward. You want to say, like, let's look at Floyd. What city was he in?
Milwaukee.
Yeah, Milwaukee.
Minneapolis.
Thank you.
Minneapolis, right? Yeah, Minneapolis. What color's the mayor?
It's a white woman, is it?
No, it's a black man.
Oh, okay.
Police chief. I'll give you a hint. It's not white.
Okay.
How about
That
the
totally
majority of
makes
the
the
council?
brutality okay. Like, what is the point?
No. No, I'm
Like-
trying to point that it's not a systemic issue. What happened to Floyd was in a city that is predominantly black, actually. What are they like? Like almost 60% black? The chief of police is black. The majority of the officers there are black. The majority isn't even like the governor or something like that black up there or something. I don't know, but the majority of the people there are black. So you're saying that their system is racist. You're saying that racism is being
You can say that
perpetuated on black people by that.
by the
By black
police.
people?
Well, by the police, but then it leads.
Majority of them's black.
Well, no, then it leads back. Why do they have that problem? And I kind of agree with you that when you work in an area that it is impoverished, and those people are all impoverished,
It's a high crime rate area.
yeah, high crime rate, you're going to. Taking the few courses that I took in criminal justice, we were all taught to cover your own ass.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of cops are scared to death every night they go to work.
I mean, it's. Well, that says a lot too. Cover your own ass. Like, don't worry about anybody but yourself. Which I don't think is a thing with police as much as it is department by department. I mean, the protest in Erlanger was like very peaceful. They walked right down.
I loved it.
They went.
Had a permit. They had a police escort. Walked right down the road. That's how it's done. That's how it's done. You don't burn down your house. Where are these riots taking place? Black neighborhoods? I mean,
Well-
jobs are being destroyed by the riots. Black jobs. What communities are being devastated by the riots? Black communities. Do people think that they're phoenixes and they're going to rise from the ashes after they like burn their house to the ground? That's what's happening. That's what I don't believe in the riots.
I
Protest
mean, you
all
don't
day
have to. Like, the riots are just a symptom. The vast
They are.
majority of these things are peaceful protests. The riots are gonna happen. It's like
They don't
anytime
have
you
to.
shove a bunch of people together in one place, somebody is gonna try and start shit.
Woodstock, 500,000 people got together to say that they were done with the system and the government as a form of protest and through a festival with music. So similar ideologies could get together and show the world that they could be unified. Million Man March.
The hippies are dead, dude.
Oh,
The hippies
no,
are
we're
dead.
not.
Oh yes,
No, we're not.
and
I say we. I'm a bit of a hippie.
the
I grew up on that stuff, man.
well, yeah, I
But
did
the
too,
Million
but
Man March, Dr. Martin Luther King would be rolling over in his grave. Really would. Um, at one of the funerals for Floyd, someone equated him to Dr. Martin Luther King and said he has done more for the black people in this country than Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm like, what? Someone doesn't
He
know
was
history.
murdered for peaceful protest, right? Dr. King was.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like, there is no right way for black people to protest in this country because they get fucking murdered. Like, I am not.
We've
I don't think
argued
it's
that.
fair to say the riots are completely unjustified. Like, they're terrible. They're awful. Like, people shouldn't be
Guns are
getting
all
killed in
illegal.
these riots. But like, they're not the source. They're the symptom. If
And
it's
when you
not
talk
such
about
a
symptoms,
widespread issue, why are the protests so pervasive?
because of media hype. We're enraging people on something. We've talked about the numbers.
You shit on the media
We've
that
gone
pisses me
over
off
those.
every day, man. I don't like. I've never seen something go happen like this before.
oh,
Not
this
like ever.
you could.
This
Oh, it's
reaction is so
happening.
widespread and huge. It's unlike anything I've ever seen or heard of. There
How
has
old
to
are
be a
you?
reason behind it. It can't just be the media.
I wouldn't say it's just the media, but I would equate some of the actions of these people in the early portions where they would see a camera and then bust a window. It was kind
5 minutes
of,
fame.
yeah, 5 minutes of fame. Look at me, I busted a
Um,
window, and it
Cheyenne, how old are you?
What, me? Oh god, how old am I?
29.
Yeah, I'm 29. Jesus.
So you don't remember what was it? 2001, the riots here in Cincinnati from was it Trayvon Martin, which
No,
actually started the Black
I didn't
Lives
live
Matter?
here. But I've heard
Well,
of
I
them.
did.
Yeah,
I did.
I
I
did.
actually went and rescued a friend who is Hispanic, by the way. They tried to flip her car on Vine Street. I actually also had to drive through the riots to pick my wife up because she was at work and needed to come home. People were afraid of dying on the streets. Trayvon shouldn't have been killed either. But you don't shit in your own bed. You don't burn down your own community. You don't. The moment you break a law like that, it, I can't justify it. People
But
in
what
authority
is
can choose them.
driving people to do this is my question. There has to be a reason people would do this. You know, it's not a vacuum.
No, it's not. And people are being driven to do it because they are enraged. But I think they're enraged because they're not truly educated onto what's actually going on. And they're made to think that this is happening every day. I mentioned this before, where they think the police are out there hunting them down like it's the purge, and it's not actually happening. There are no numbers that substantiate that. Not at all. Yes, hundreds of like black people are killed by cops in America, but very few of them are unarmed black people killed by cops. Very, very few, right? And there's a difference between armed and unarmed. And there's a difference between killing somebody who is unarmed who threatens your life than killing someone who is unarmed that was no threat, like with Floyd, right? And I watched the man suffer time and time again, saying he couldn't breathe. It was horrible. I also watched a video of the same thing happening to a white guy who called the cops for help for himself because he was schizophrenic. Just shortly after, did you see that one? Did you see where that he knelt on his back for 15 minutes? A white guy. He said, "Please, I'm dying." Literally knew he was dying and said, "I'm dying," and they laughed at him because of the noises he was making. It just did you see the video?
Apparently, none of us have.
Look it up. Did you see the video in Pike County where the cop had a man who was tied to a chair, drug him outside, and beat him until he broke
I
his
did
nose
see
and
that.
eye. I mean, police brutality exists, but our media chooses exactly what uh, you are. I mean, as a country, we, I shouldn't say you, but we are force fed an agenda. We are audited and edited and force fed media material from every social media aspect, from Facebook to Twitter to whatever it is you use, YouTube, CNN, MSNBC, you name them. They are force feeding us stuff that fits and suits their agenda, and they throw all this hype behind it. I mean, I remember the Rodney King beatings, and when the cops got off, there was riots all over the United States, and people were burning stuff down, and and a lot of people never really recovered from that. It was a travesty, but they were acting like it was happening every day, uh, and it's not. There are no numbers to support that, and there's no numbers to support that it's specifically a black issue. It's it is. There are numbers that support it being a socioeconomic issue that spreads across all races. Those those are just the numbers. Those are the facts. And people get enraged because we allow ourselves to be enraged. We become the mob of Rome, right? We got our Caesars standing up on their little pulpits telling us, whatever it is, and then throwing us bread. And,
There's renewed anger
and the
in the
mob
United
rules, right?
States over police
And
violence.
that's what we have
Footage has
become a
emerged
mob.
of a
We've become a
75-year-old
mob that
demonstrator
frenzies at the
protesting
drop of
the
a
death
hat,
George
depending on
Floyd,
what the media
being
wants.
pushed to the ground by officers and suffering serious head
And we
wounds.
have. I used to
Happened
be
in the
that
city
guy.
of Buffalo in
I really did. I mean, I've been there at protests and stuff. I've never rioted. Right? I don't like going to jail. I'm allergic to it. You commit crimes, you break out in prison. It's a horrible condition. Um, but we are being force fed an agenda, and the agenda is not always healthy for us. I mean, I've seen so many people on Facebook like, yeah, we're going to riot, we're going to burn this MFer down. I'm like, how many jobs are you going to destroy in your community when you do that? How many people aren't going to be able to go to work tomorrow and get a paycheck so they can feed their kids or pay their rent or make their car payment or maybe make that school loan? Maybe they're going to have to drop out of class. It's the butterfly effect. What are we doing to ourselves when we react emotionally instead of logically?
I think focusing on the riots though is a bit disingenuous because most organizers are saying be peaceful, don't break shit, don't hurt people, just show up to the protest, register to vote, and go vote after you're done
Vote it out.
protesting.
Yep.
Like I think you just seem very hyper focused on the riots when they're a rarity that again gets a lot of media coverage because it's what you do when you're the news. You want ratings, right? You're going to report on the riots and not the
Right.
peaceful protests. So I think
Exactly.
we should continue to acknowledge the
Calls
fact
them-
that these protests are mostly peaceful.
Oh yes,
No, there was a lot of peaceful protests. I said that, and I gave
Yeah.
them props. Right? I mean, good for them. That's the way
Flint,
it's done.
Michigan. There was like video of Flint, Michigan, where like the police actually marched with them, and there was no rioting. There was no
Absolutely.
like. I kind of see Cincinnati doing it as kind of heavy-handed because they have a civilians board like of checks and balances already in effect from the Trayvon Martin thing. Like I understand,
Black
I
Lives
want
Matter started right there.
like I want you to fix this, and they've openly said we'll fix it. So I think like Louisville, everything that's happened in Louisville, I don't want to say should happen, but there's a lot of mistrust and misuse in that police department.
Well, so
Like he got
here's
fired
how
on
it's
air. Like the mayor of Louisville fired the
Yeah, make an
police
example
chief
out of them. They should.
on air. And I
Yeah, that
was
was nuts.
I was kind of like, "Oh, okay, this is happening."
But yeah. So here's the thing, and I know we've digressed a lot, and we've gone like off on like several. Or at least I've gone off on several tangents. I'm sorry about that. I tend to soapbox sometimes. I get really passionate about things. But with the protest, I mean, they need to be targeted, right? There was this, my wife brought it to my attention. She's a prolific reader, and she read this essay written recently by Barack Obama, you know, excellent Chicago civil rights lawyer before he became president. It's probably where I believe he did most of his best work. It was when he was a lawyer, even though he wasn't president. Barack, if you ever see this, I want an autograph. But he wrote this essay. He's like, if you're going to protest, you need to be specific. Don't just go out and do this crazy stuff. But in a nutshell, he's like, you need to go to the people that you're protesting and tell them what it is you want changed and how to change it. Right? You just can't cry that things are unfair. Come with a solution. It's one of my things I do when I teach. I'm like, if you don't like how I teach my class, come to me with a solution and I'll change how I teach it. I'm like, I'll try to teach you differently. Tell me how I can be better. And that's what we need to do as protesters. We need to let them know what they need to do to be better, right? It doesn't help destroying your infrastructure. If you're protesting a bad bridge, maybe. If there's a bridge that's crumbling and falling apart and there's a group of protesters, probably going to get audited by the CIA for this, and you think that bridge should be rebuilt, nobody will, tear that bridge down, right?
I can think of one bridge in particular around here. That bridge is terrifying.
Yeah.
Which one?
The double decker that's like crumbling slowly every day.
Horrible. Have you ever been across, what is it, the 12th Street Viaduct or whatever it is going into Queen City? There's literally...
I don't think so.
Go to Queen City sometime and then come back. Queen City and come back to Kentucky.
Oh.
That bridge, there are chunks missing and you can see the rebar. And the city has literally gone and spray painted around it as areas of concern.
Oh my god.
Like whole sections of the pillars. But yeah, I mean, protest specifically, right? If somebody equated the riots and the destruction and stuff like that to the Boston Tea Party. I'm like, okay, there is destruction and destruction. They have that and similar, but the Boston Tea Party was very specific. They didn't tear up their own businesses. They didn't tear up their own town, right? They were protesting British taxes and tariffs on imported tea that was from Great Britain on a British ship. They went to that ship and they dumped it all in the harbor to say, no, we're not going to buy this from you because British people, England was forcing them to buy tea specifically from them at a jacked up price. So they went and destroyed the tea, which was, in today's money, would have been worth probably almost $1 billion because back then tea was compressed. You would buy 1 pound of tea and it was so compressed it would last you all year. You would shave off little fragments and make the tea. And it was worth more than gold by weight. And they dumped it in the harbor, right? They were protesting something very specific. They were trying to destroy something very specific that made a point. Now, I'm not saying go out and attack cops specifically. There are good cops.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
They're trying to feed their family, right? Don't burn cop cars because guess what? Taxpayers pay for those. They're going to have to be replaced. They're going to jack your taxes up. But go stand in front of the police station, look them dead in the eye and say, hell no. We're done. And so are you. Goodbye. Because we the people, a government for the people and by the people, right? We are the people and you're done. That's how you properly protest something like that. And that's not what we're seeing. That's what Martin Luther King would tell us to do. That's what Barack Obama is telling us to do. He's not telling us to go steal Polo's church and Target, right? He's not telling us to burn down a bar, that black-owned business in a black neighborhood, a firefighter who saved countless lives in his life, saved countless structures from being destroyed and family's property, saved up his money and built a bar in his community that was actually really nice. They burned it down and stole his liquor, right? During the Trayvon Martin riots here in Cincinnati. I mean, I had to go through that stuff, and I was literally in downtown twice when it was going on, and it was crazy. And I wasn't there to protest a riot. I was there to extract friends, people who I cared about who was afraid to get hurt because of the color of their skin.
I got to drink all night that night. the first night because I worked at a bar and on Vine Street, and
Yeah,
we
I
got
mean, it
to
was nuts.
we got to
That's why I
stay
had to
we
go
got to
see-
stay there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
her
so I'm-
car was across the street. But there's this business in Cincinnati called Devereaux's. You ever heard of it? It's
Nope.
up off of up by Fort Washington Way, where Camp Washington Chili is. Predominantly black neighborhood. He owns a very large clothing store that caters to black culture, right? Apple bottom jeans, shorty got low. But
That's an old meme.
right,
That's a very old meme.
but I mean, he's a black man. He was very poor. He came up, started a business, grew that business, and catered to black culture. Every year, he would donate lots and lots of money and his time to the black community. During the Trayvon riot, the riots in Cincinnati, they busted into the store, and it's a large store, looted it, stole just about everything out of it, and set it on fire. You don't shit in your own bed. Don't burn down your own house. The owner of Devereaux's, do you know what he said? Never again will I help the black community. He was a prominent black man in Cincinnati, and he was shit on during riots. And that's what we do. That's why I can't get on. I can't. They're a sticking point with me. I think it devalues the whole movement. The moment you get violent, you become as bad as the thing you're protesting.
Yeah, and there's instances of owners of businesses, people of color, who said the exact opposite of what that guy said over in Minneapolis. They're like, I get it. I can rebuild. It sucks, but I get why it happened. Because, I mean, Minneapolis has a bit of a reputation.
No, I know why it happened, but does it make
Oh
it
yeah,
right?
I mean we all know why the riots are happening. It doesn't make them good things, but it I think we're on different pages with this. I kind of acknowledge it as an inevitability, sort of like a boiling pot that was gonna burst.
Well,
And
yeah, but
I
it didn't have to be.
like
I think if we stop glorifying stuff like that, the less it happens.
Well, I think
Can we agree that they've been glorified?
no, I see a lot more. I see a lot more people decrying them than glorifying them. And to be sure, it's not all just the protesters. Like some of it is malevolent intent, right? Like an
Yeah.
intent to actually discredit the movement. Like somebody incites a riot, a third party to make Black Lives Matter look bad, or something like that, or just crazy people because they
Yeah,
see
just
something to do, an opportunity.
People trying to take advantage of a situation. and-
Exactly, yeah. It's not all just protesters suddenly turned violent into rioting. Like, no, that was just some dick who showed up to the protest and decided he was gonna pull some shit, And it's it's more than just the protesters turning violent.
Right, and in that scenario, if I was at a protest where that happened, I would step like 10 feet back, be like, "It was him."
Yeah, exactly.
gotta-
That's what a lot of folks are trying to
gotta
do.
go.
They're trying to
You
be
have
like, hey, you stop that right now, or like calling people out, or even trying to restrain them in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, you can't protest violence with violence. I mean, can we agree there's a hypocrisy there? That violent protesting to stop violence, it's like,
It's hard because a lot of revolutions were very violent, and I don't want to just automatically decry rioting. I don't think it is a good aligned thing to do, but at the same time, it's like I saw this coming.
well,
it always happens.
when you've got
It really does
stressors,
always happen.
when you've got stressors like being forced to stay in your house for 3 months, and you lose your jobs, and you're not making,
Yeah.
and you're bored, and then somebody gets killed on live TV, there's gonna be a pop. I mean,
And watching that video, like I understand the emotional response. Like I can't watch that video. I can't do it.
Yeah, so, and that's kind of the point I was getting to I was kind of like chasing a rabbit around it earlier, that it's good politics to keep angry black people angry. Because who are they angry at this point? They're angry at a system that they have been told has been created against them to keep them down. And I'll agree, there is a system that keeps poor people down, not just black people, but poor people. So it's very politically profitable to keep your demographic riled up and angry at the opposing party. Um, a lot of the news media and coverage that you see that is like showing the riots and constantly showing the like guy dying and stuff like that. You're looking at left leaning news channels, right? Um, I don't typically watch right leaning news channels, but checking out a couple of them to see what's going on, and they actually have like black leaders saying, "Hey guys, this isn't right." Right? It's not right that he died, but the way we're responding isn't right, and we're being baited. And I think that's what a lot of it is. It's let's keep the angry black man angry so we can keep his vote. To be completely honest, and I think it's wrong. I think we're baiting an entire culture, an entire race. And if there's anything that is systematically racist in this country, it's our political system. It's not our businesses. It's not our school system. It's not our police force. Remember, our police force are citizens, right? They get hired and fired and trained. They go to school to become that. Um, but politicians are career politicians. They're the aristocracy, right? They're the kings and queens, right? That people have always fought revolutions against. But where are we turning our focus? And who's pulling those strings? Who's going to profit out of this the most? You said it yourself. Go vote, right? They're tagging register and go vote onto the end of this. So we can't deny that it's being used as a ploy or a tactic to drum up political support. Can we not? I mean, it's blatant. It's right there. Nancy Pelosi went and put on a dashiki or whatever they call those things over her shoulder, like she's from Africa or something, and knelt for 9 minutes. But before that, she was talking about cultural appropriation. So here she is just pandering for votes. So you got to watch where you get your information from, because a lot of the times they're trying to lead you.
Oh, I do not like Pelosi. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, me either. But we get led around by our political parties, and we get told what to believe without any actual information. I have seen so many times all right, I'm going to put it out there. I think Trump, as a human being, is not a great person. He doesn't present well. He doesn't speak well. He's not a great orator. He stammers and mumbles around and says some uneducated shit. So. However, some of the crap that I've seen posted about him is completely out of context, like manufactured to the point of being a lie just to like piss people off. And it's like, yeah, he didn't say that. I actually watched that speech. Like, I've seen memes about him. I'm like, he didn't say that. I watched that speech. That's only a few words of a much larger sentence, which somebody must have wrote for him because it was well thought out. But he stuck to the script that time. I've seen so much of that where we get led around by our media and our political parties, and we are force-fed what they want us to believe. And that's what I think white privilege is. It's another way to lead us around, to try to make us feel guilty about something we didn't do, about something that I can't agree that exists because I've seen no empirical evidence, I've seen no numbers, nothing that actually supports it, right? And I've read all kinds of essays on the matter. I had a student, the reason I got so involved in it, right? I had a student sit in my class one day. He's like, Mr. Sumter, do you think white privilege exists? I'm like, absolutely. And I started spouting the same bullshit that everybody else does. And then he's like, well, what about that 18-year-old student schooled me? He's like, well, what about this? What about that? I'm like, hold on. And I started thinking about my experience, you know? And I'm like, yeah, that's not my experience. My experience is really harsh, you know? I grew up impoverished in a crime-ridden area where I'm the first person on either side of my family to graduate high school. I'm the first one to go to college, right? Um, uh, there, nobody other than my mom and my dad thought I would ever succeed at anything, right? The likelihood of me going to prison was high. As a matter of fact, I'm the only person in my family who's never been to prison, other than my mama. I mean, the odds of me making it this far without going to prison was very, very slim. And that had nothing to do with the color of my skin. That had to do with the class that I grew up in, the poverty level that I grew up in, and the high crime rate in the town that I grew up in. Right? The same thing happens to white people in Appalachia, Native Americans in Oklahoma, Inuits in Alaska, right? If you go to these impoverished areas, regardless of what color the person is, you're going to find the same exact thing. It has nothing to do with their skin. It has to do with how thick their wallet is. That's what it has to do with. How much green is in their wallet. And who can afford lawyers? Rich people, right? So who gets prosecuted more? Poor people. Who's more likely to go to prison? Poor people, because they can't afford the judicial system, right? It's for profit. Prisons are for profit. People make money off of it. They want to see you go to jail. And they don't care what color you are. It's how much money they can make off of you while you're in jail. I just still can't get behind targeting a collective, a group, an ethnicity, right, for a crime, regardless of their own personal experiences or contributions to that crime of racism. I can't get behind that, saying because you're white, you have all these privileges, which is built on the back of racism. And when it's not true for everybody, and if it's not true for everybody, you can't say it's true for everybody. If you can find one person it's not true for, then you can't be all encompassing, because that's definitive, that's finite, it's an absolute. You can't deal in absolutes. So we can't say white privilege, we can say privilege, right? That exists. It's not based on skin color. If the moment you deal in absolutes, you are dealing in black and whites and yes and no's. And I just can't believe that the greatest country in the world is still built off of racism when I've seen no empirical evidence there. I can't believe that white.
We can fight that we can fight about us being the most greatest country in the world another day.
I was just saying, let's not
get into that.
I have been back many a thing.
We can do that. We can.
No, I want to go to bed soon.
Yeah.
No, the next one. We'll do another one on why America is the greatest country in the world.
Well, I'm going to tell people. I'm going to tell people you have an hour and 45 minutes to unpack, and to leave comments and
tell people to post and comment.
Post your video. Post a video, and
I love it.
And people that want to argue his many beliefs, get in contact with me. Or Cheyenne. And we didn't say hi to Mike, but Mike is right there.
Mike's hanging out.
But
I think that we don't really inherently disagree on a lot of stuff here.
It's good to have a common ground. A common ground is a place to stand.
Like, classism is a huge issue. I think we're just in a different spot. I think possibly